Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first stream of 2022. Is that correct? Is that the year? Is that the current year? And there goes Mode 7 and subscribes again. Thank you. Amazing. 11 months. That is almost a year. It's pretty cool. Thank you very much. Yeah, first stream of the new year. I hope you're all good. You had a good Christmas. As you might have noticed, I didn't manage to stream between Christmas and New Year. Mostly due, as I said on the podcast, due to I did record a podcast in between there, but I just didn't have time to schedule streams, and I just didn't want to hassle with it either. The vaccination knocked me out again, and so I had a lot of stuff to catch up during the holiday between the two, between Christmas and New Year's. Thank you, Mode 7, again. Yes. So I hope you're doing well. I hope you had a good Christmas with anybody you wanted to have there, and hopefully nobody else. Christmas always, with most families, it is somewhat of a difficult thing, but I hope it worked out for you, and then, you had a good New Year's. Probably low-key everywhere, right? It's kind of okay where I was. I'm going to talk about that on the podcast, so let's get into that, shall we? Oh, my NaNoWriMo winter shirt has arrived. Winner! It's my second one. I got one from 2011 as well. Still wear that quite a lot. But anyway, let's get everything prepped. Once again, I'm quite late with this, so I should try to get this out during the actual day today. What we are talking about today is a somewhat interesting decision. Let me do some test recording while I talk about that. By the German Constitutional Court about a triage and discrimination. And they want to make sure there's no discrimination when triage happens in a hospital, because of the pandemic. And of course, that sounds reasonable and like a good idea, but it's actually not. And I'm going to explain why. A triage and discrimination. And they want to, I think it's kind of an important topic. It's a bit of a sad topic, but maybe grab yourself a drink. I'm drinking Earl Grey. I'm doing dry January again, even though like last year I didn't feel any different during it. But this year I want to see if that actually influences my my training regimen. We'll see. So far, I'm not noticing anything except sometimes the hankering for alcohol, which I then suppress. And I think as long as I can still do that, I'm not an alcoholic. But that I'm not a doctor. That's my personal opinion. Anyway, let's do this. Let's get into the show as usual. 2 beers always makes me feel better at everything. It does. That's the Barmer curve. Beers are quite nice. I don't really count them. Well, it's bad to say I don't count them as alcohol, which I do. But like, ever since I lived in the UK, I don't really get drunk off beers anymore. Like, I think I literally could drink a case of beer and I wouldn't get drunk. The problem is I can drink so much beer that I won't get drunk off it, but I'll get other problems. Like, the problems I have is that I can't drink any more beer either because I just have to go to the toilet constantly because I just imbibe too much liquid, or I don't feel like drinking anything anymore, or I fall asleep, but I never really get drunk off it. Yeah, but 2 beers is a good spot. Or maybe in my case, 2 double whiskeys, 2 straight whiskeys, doubles. Right. What was I gonna do here? Test that this works. Seems to work. I was gonna push this button. Ground rules. Of course, I'm not gonna engage with chat as much as I usually do. This is just down to making it easier for the podcast listeners to listen to the fucking podcast, which this is, after all, originally. Although, some people recently have said that they really like watching this, so I guess it's working. For some people, that's all I really want to do. Anyway, I might as well stream this. I'm sitting down to record this anyway, and generally, sometimes, with the last episode, between Christmas and New Year's, it actually relaxes me and takes stress away if I don't have to do it live. So sometimes I will just do that, but whenever I can, I will just do it. Anyway, let's stop talking about doing it. I should take a breath once in a while. That makes it easier to talk. And I should stop talking about doing it and actually do it. So let's get on with the show here. What the fuck was that? Why did it do that? Don't know if you actually heard that. Okay. Let's do it. You're listening to The Private Citizen, defending your right to have something to hide. Podcast for critical thinkers. This is episode 104 for Wednesday, the 5th of January, 2022. Triage is too logical for Germans. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. My name is Fab. I'm your host. Come to you live from Düsseldorf in Germany. First show for the new year. I was always expect to get the year wrong. The first few shows, when I write it, when I sign something and I have to write the date, I always have to think twice now for about a month or whatever. Welcome to the new year. I officially welcome you to the new year. Thanks for being there. Today we're going to talk about Triage, which is of course to do with the pandemic. And a law that the German Constitutional Court, they have made a decision that they want a law. And it's to prevent discrimination, is what they say. And that sounds reasonable and good, but it isn't. And I'm going to try to explain why today. So settle down with your favorite drink in your favorite chair or whatever, as I always say. I'm having Earl Grey. I'm doing dry January again for no particular reason. Really, that's really the case because last year I didn't really notice any difference, I think. But just wanna. Can't hurt, can it? And I think it's good to challenge you once in a while. So that's the challenge I've picked. I hope you had a good Christmas with your family or your friends or nobody at all, or just the right mixture of everything. Which seems to be a hard thing to do. We ran away this year. I didn't want to. We always have family over, and we were going to do that after Christmas now, but we wanted to have a relaxing Christmas. We had a very, both me and my wife had a year filled with a lot of work, so we relaxed a bit. That was cool, and then I actually kept on working. She also worked. We both worked, during the holidays, and then we had a nice New Year's with friends, same friends who we had spent New Year's with the last few years. And generally, probably low key for everybody, no fireworks allowed. But we friends live in northern Germany in the middle of nowhere, where there's approximately one police car for an area that is as big as a federal state. So there's like nothing. There's like everybody they all still have fireworks and they all shoot them off, which was hilarious. And friends have a hot tub now, which was great, a wood-fired hot tub. So, we were recently talking about climate matters. Probably not the best decision there, but awesome. It's fun. It's great. I mean, we had a good New Year's. So I hope it's the same for you. And yeah, I'm going to talk about the feedback later, but I had some very encouraging feedback over the break, and some people wrote some nice things about the last few episodes and the podcast in general, and so I feel very motivated for 2022 and the podcast, and it should hopefully be great. So yeah, I already talked about the topic. I'm going to talk about this. I think I said I was going to do the show a few episodes ago. I can't really remember. I did a lot of episodes in December, but I am. We're going to talk about this federal court, this constitutional court decision about triage and the pandemic. And then I want to do an episode next week if everything goes according to plan. Things might change. There might be an emergency topic coming up or whatever. But this is the plan. An episode that I had wanted to do for quite a while, which is I want to do one of these more philosophical, in-depth episodes, more generalized, not about a specific news item or topic or whatever. And it's going to be about the difference between law and justice, which is something I feel a lot of people seem to conflate, and especially people who work in, as we say in German, we call them Rechtspfleger, the caretakers of the law, so judges, lawyers, state attorneys. But also I think people who work in law enforcement, the police, they sometimes seem to conflate justice with the law. And I think it's important to talk about. And I think today is actually an example of this. So I'm going to go into that a little bit, but then probably expand on it next week. And next week, the episode will definitely not come out on Wednesday. That's the usual plan, of course. That'll remain the plan. The promise I give to you is that I'm going to release an episode every week this year. Well, an episode for every week this year. Not necessarily in every week. There will be times that I'm taking off from the show, and but I'll make up for it. And I'll try to release it on Wednesday, so we have a set a set schedule, and you have something you can depend on and to expect. But that might change in some weeks, and one of the weeks is next week, because next week on Wednesday I have an appointment to get some tattooing done. Which I've been pursuing this tattooist for quite a while now. I think probably 2 years. And I finally have a few appointments. It's actually probably gonna take 2 appointments. It's gonna be whole upper arm. I'll probably put some pictures in the show notes next week. Well, not next episode, because I might release that before Wednesday. That's a plan. But in an upcoming episode. But yeah, so I won't do anything on Wednesday. Well, not. I'm just gonna nurse my hurting arm in the evening. I think probably watch some Netflix or whatever. Yeah. So just that And another thing I can already probably announce. It's not 100%, but I think I'm gonna take February off from the podcast. I'm gonna take February off from everything else. I've cleared my calendar on the whole month of February. Not going to take any paid writing jobs or hosting gigs for webinars or anything like that, because I want to finish my book, my novel, and I've got this grant, which I talked about earlier, previous shows, from the German government, which is a 5,000 euro grant. To finish this book. So I already got 4,500. That's in the bank. But if I finish my plan to finish it by the end of this grant, which is the end of February, I get another 500. And it's not so much the 500, although that's nice to have, but it's also just the challenge. I just want to do it. So, and I got a lot to do at NaNoWriMo, of course, but, obviously didn't get as much done since November as I wanted to. December was a very busy month for me, and Monday, January's Monday. the January of the week, Monday. Monday's what? January is shaping up to be another month like that. So I'm probably gonna take February off, which includes a podcast. Which I don't know if I'm gonna do some episodes before that, but I'll make it up to you after, I promise. 52 episodes a year. That's so far we've done that for 2 years, and I'm gonna do that again this year, if at all possible. But anyway, let's get into the actual topic we want to talk about today. So I've been waffling for long enough now, I think. And that topic is, so the German Constitutional Court, the Bundesverfassungsgericht, also abbreviated BVG, is, I talked about that, it's like the highest court in the land. It's not like they don't have suits, right? They have, if there's a court decision or something else that you think, even as a private person, right, that you don't have to be a lawyer in this case to like bring a suit or anything. It's like you can be a private person. If there's anything you feel like a court decision, or just something legally going on that like impinges on your rights under the Constitution, you can complain to the Constitutional Court. And under certain circumstances, they will look at the issue and they will have a decision. And it's not like any other legal suit in Germany. It's just some judges, and they just deliberate, and then they explain their decision, and then that's that. And usually they don't really pass laws. They just make a decision, but that can never be overturned. I think in some circumstances the Constitutional Court could decide again, but that's generally not done. Usually when they decide something, it's like a little bit like the Constitutional Court in the US, right? You know, the Supreme Court, I mean. It's like when they decide something, it's done. And they've done so again now. There were some private citizens that complained, and they said, we are disabled people, handicapped people, and we are afraid that if the pandemic's getting worse and hospitals do not have the capacity to keep everybody alive that they need to, then there will be triage will be done. And that will mean that, we could get, actually, they will make the decision that somebody else will be rescued, right? And that would be discrimination against us. And so the Constitutional Court has decided, they have ruled, they have said, yes, this is true. So the federal government of Germany, the Bundestag, sorry, the hell, what's wrong with my brain? It's probably dry January, my brain ain't working right. It's not enough alcohol, making the synapses fluid or whatever. I'm not a doctor, by the way, just in case you haven't noticed. They have decided that the federal government will have to pass a law, have to make a law that protects handicapped people in case of a coronavirus related, like a SARS-CoV-2 pandemic related triage. It will have to make sure that handicapped people are not discriminated against, which Mode 7 is in Twitch chat, says, get a couple of beers, just down 2 real quick, so nobody notices. No, this is a mental challenge, right? I'm challenging myself. Don't tempt me. So they have, although with this topic, actually, some beers might be in order, really. So if you're not doing Dry January, or you're listening to this in February, or whatever, just go for it. It's mental, the challenge. It kind of is, isn't it? Yeah. So I mean, this is true. There is an article in the German Constitution, specifically Article 2, that says nobody shall be discriminated against. I talked about this because I felt that, saying that somebody who is not vaccinated is not allowed to do certain things would be discrimination under this article. Because I felt like, you're looking at somebody's antibodies in their blood and you're basically saying, well, you don't have the antibodies, you can't go in here, which, generally this article is, well, it generally protects everybody, but it protects, against religious, that's what it was originally drafted for, religious persecution or persecution of, handicapped people. Obviously the German Constitution is a reaction to the Nazis, who severely discriminated against both religious people. We had this discussion. That's what I think, when it comes to, the Jewish faith, because I don't feel that scientifically race exists. So I would say against religion, but, there's an argument, we had that argument, but also specifically against handicapped people. They killed people because they were handicapped. They were like, if these people, or they sterilized them, like if these people procreate, then it'll pollute the gene pool or whatever. Although I don't think they specifically really knew what genes were, but you know what I mean. So there is an argument there, and I do, to some extent, understand why the Constitutional Court has decided this way when you just look at the laws. But I think in this case they looked a little bit too much at the letter of the law instead of the spirit of the law. Now, what I find this very disheartening, because I always thought the German Constitutional Court to be a great bastion of civil rights and it certainly is very important. It's a very important factor in our democratic system, in our system of checks and balances, and it's a very important institution. But I'm a bit disheartened with them. I recently had an episode about the Constitutional Court deciding that the pandemic measures in the summer, so taking away people's civil liberties, were justified. And I specifically had an issue with that, because I think what the Constitutional Court didn't look at is what the government didn't do. Instead of lockdowns and instead of talking about force vaccinating people or whatever, wearing masks and all this stuff, what the government specifically didn't do for the last 18 months is prepare the medical system for this pandemic. So this is why we now have the problem that we are faced with even the possibility that there are not enough intensive care beds. And when I say beds, that is the shorthand. I'm of course, the beds are not the problem. The machines are not the problem, like this whole respirator thing that was happening, or that was reported on the beginning of the pandemic. It's of course bullshit. You need a bed and you need specific care personnel, and that's the problem. You need doctors and nurses, right? Those are, and when I say a bed, that's like shorthand for a bed and the appropriate personnel for the time that you need it for, right? It might be there, but you might just like, there might be not enough because people who have COVID tend to stay in these beds a lot longer than people who have other diseases. Generally, if you're in a intensive care bed, it's a situation of you either dying relatively quickly or you then recovering relatively quickly, so you can put in a more normal situation, in a more normal bed, right? It's generally, there are not that many other illnesses where you'll be in that bed for weeks on end, maybe even a month or whatever. That's the main problem. Now, I am aware that there are people who are saying that, exponential whatever infection, and then, although I don't think that maps to actual people getting this, the disease bad enough that there will be an intensive care bed, but, that's certainly a discussion to be had. But my issue is that the government here in Germany did not try at all. And once again, I'm talking about Germany here because it's my local situation. I know a lot about this. But I think it applies, from what I'm reading and hearing, applies to many other countries the same way. It's just happening the same way. So if you are from another country and have input on this, please let me know. Go to privatecitizen.press. You will find the show notes for this episode there as well. This is episode 104, with all the background material and all the stuff I'm talking about. But also links to a contact page where you can contact me in various ways, also anonymously. And, please do that if you have insight on the situation on the ground where you are, or also if you disagree with what I'm saying. I think that's completely legitimate, healthy, and keeps the show on its toes. And, that's what this show is. I don't want you to agree with me, and I don't expect you to. And I would like to hear your viewpoint, as long as it's, well articulated and not full of shouting. I mean, shouting is justified sometimes, but generally, at least try to make a point that I can use, also that I can talk about on the show. So that's certainly the situation in Germany. The government hasn't done anything. If anything, they decreased capacity for intensive care beds, and the people manning those beds, so to speak, or womaning, or whatever you say these days. So it's and I had an issue with the Constitutional Court going, well, the government is allowed to do these measures, was allowed to do these measures, even though they're very, very restricting to people's civil rights, and we actually and freedoms, and we actually see that, and we recognize that, but we're saying there was no other way. And I'm actually saying there was another way. Had the government reacted quickly, there would have been one. And the same applies in this case. There's no mention in this decision. So the Constitutional Court's basically saying, well, the complaint of these people is justified. They have a justified worry that they will die because they don't get the care because of triage. And that seems to be justified under, that seems to be reasonable, that shouldn't happen under the Constitution. So the government shall pass a law to make sure that this doesn't happen. As in, regulate triage legally. But it doesn't say, well, the government should bloody well make sure that there are hospital beds. And I don't understand why people always claim that this isn't possible. I mean, it is very possible. Just imagine another emergency situation. Right? Let's say we had a Cold War again. Let's say Germany was afraid to be invaded by Russia, for example. We would ramp up the military in a heartbeat. There would be, they would literally draft people, right? In Germany, we used to draft young men, in peacetime for a year. We just draft them, and they'd have to run through the mud, crawl through the mud for a year. There could be a situation where if this pandemic is as bad as everybody says, and it's this humanitarian crisis and everything, then, which I'm not denying that it is that, but if it is that, why are we not forced drafting people into becoming COVID nurses? And that is a serious question. I personally don't want that to happen, but if you look at a disaster response by a state, we could do all of this. We could throw billions of money at just, getting these. Now it's too late, but a year ago, we could have gone, well, this is obviously bad. Let's create a program where we pay people very generously to become, intensive care nurses, where we ramp up the technology, we ramp up education, all of this stuff that, we poured Germany. I talked about this. What was it? 1.6 billion euros into this fucking app, into the Corona Warn, this fucking, contact tracing app, which nobody is not even working. It's not literally, the friend I was with in, over New Year's, so this is I think the day after New Year's, I think 1st of January, whatever. we were over there. We're sitting at the table in the morning, and her phone goes like. She picks up her phone. She's like, "Oh, the Corona Warn app just told me I had a high risk exposure 5 weeks ago." And she was like literally worried for a second. I was like, "Why are you worried?" Like, if you were infected 5 weeks ago, you would have noticed, or you're over it already. Like, what? Like, you're vaccinated. She was vaccinated, right? So I'm like, either you get sick because the vaccination doesn't work, or the fucking vaccination gets your immune system, and then it's gone by now, right? You're not keeping the virus around for 5 weeks. If we poured 1.6 billion. I think that was the number. I mean, I could look it up. It was over €1 billion. Like, imagine they put that into educating, like creating jobs for COVID nurses and doctors. Like, it's like specific, like 1 year training course or whatever you need to do. Like, if we really wanted to do, they could do that. Or if the Constitutional Court had forced the government to do this a year ago. And I'm not saying that's gonna solve the problem, because I don't know. Because I don't know what we could have accomplished if we tried a year ago. But we didn't even try. That's my very point. Like, it might have actually accomplished something. Mod7 says, our local hospital was overwhelmed not too long ago, and the National Guard was brought in to help the doctors and nurses. Well, the thing with the overwhelmed is also that happens regularly, right? Like, there's also something that in the press gets mystified as, oh no, this emergency room has to be closed because they're overwhelmed. This literally happens all the time. There might be a bus accident on the highway. There might be a fucking hacker attack, and they have to close the emergency room. Or ICUs get overwhelmed, and then you have to transport. I grant you it's happening a lot more now because we're in a fucking pandemic. I'm not saying like it's business as usual right now. I'm just saying, like, everybody treats this as if this never happened before. Like, the press goes, oh my God, ICU over, like, this literally happened. Like, I remember a story when I was living in Hanover. There was this thing where so there was this, I think, like, Pakistani, like, mafia clan, right? And they were in a fight with the Hells Angels in the Lüneburg Heath area because they were trying to take organized crime from the Hells Angels. So there was a I think it was, are they, no, not Afghan. I think that, no, are they Pakistani? No, Lebanese. They're from the Lebanon. Sorry, I got that right. Anyway, there's like these mafia family clans, right? And they were having a wedding. So the Hells Angels turned up in force and crashed the wedding, and everybody started, like, there was a brawl. Like, they didn't shoot or anything. It was just a huge brawl. Like, literally the whole wedding, there were 400 people at the wedding, and then, like, I don't know, 120 Hells Angels turned up, and then this huge brawl, and then, ensued. And of course, it was like in a building that was rented, so the people called the police. The police arrives, spends, like, I don't know, half an hour, like, pacifying the situation, separating the two groups, and ambulances were called. They pick up all the wounded, and because it's like the Lüneburg Heath in the middle of nowhere, they brought everybody to the Heide Krankenhaus, which is the Heath Hospital. It's like one hospital that serves like a relatively big area. There's like not that many people living there. Brought everybody into the emergency room of the hospital, right? So all the mafia family clan people that are wounded are there, and all the wounded Hells Angels are there, and then the relatives turn up. And then the fight broke out in the hospital emergency room again. They trashed the whole emergency room. They had to, shut down the emergency room, which was the point of the story. But then police had to separate them again, and they had to bring like one party, I think, all the Hells Angels to another. Like, actually, no, they had to bring both parties to different hospitals because they couldn't use that emergency room anymore. So, fun shit like this happens all the time. And yes, of course, as Astrology points out, hospitals are or used to be overwhelmed because of the flu, influenza. That used to happen here in Germany as well. It's just like, I'm not saying it's always like it's business as usual, and this is not bad. I'm just saying these are situations if you talk to medical professionals that they know about, that there's precedent for all of this. It's really bad now, but there is precedent. Also, there's precedents about triage. I'm very, very sure that hospitals that are overwhelmed for the flu, if there are people that are really sick, that, maybe in the past they had to, initiate triage procedures because they couldn't help anybody. But anyway, what I was saying is that, had we prepared as a society, it might actually be better now. And what I have a huge issue with is that nobody actually seems to be critical of that we didn't do that. And the reason why we didn't do that is that I personally think it's very inconvenient. Hospitals in my country, in Germany, are very profit oriented. They're almost all of them are companies, even though even university hospitals generally have a part that is a public hospital, that's university hospital that belongs to the federal state or whatever who's running the university, and then they have several companies that run other parts of the hospital, and there's no actual very few real public hospitals anymore. Some of them are there's still some that are run by the church, that are that way, but they're getting fewer and fewer in between as well. So it's a very profit-oriented endeavor, and it's like this to change all of this would have been a huge thing. And I've been actually saying from the beginning, we should have changed when this thing came up and the writing was on the wall. We should have changed the hospital system and went to a completely socialized healthcare system. I'm not saying socialism. I'm saying in Germany. Before the 90s, the telecoms company wasn't a company, right? It was state infrastructure, right? The telephone system, the railway was state infrastructure. And I don't understand why hospitals aren't that. If anything, hospitals should be the first thing to be state run. I'm not saying state run is the best way to do things. I mean, that certainly has its own problems, but the profit oriented thing is a problem, right? Because if you go and say we need more, emergency beds, ICU beds, and we need all these ICU people, then your controlling will say, yeah, well, we need that now, but what in a year? In a year, we hired those people, we can't get rid of them anymore. Got all the equipment, why did all the fucking supply chain collapse during the pandemic? Because profit-oriented companies, they plan for the mean situation, right? They don't plan for the emergency. We couldn't have foreseen this, right? That's what they have insurance for, and then it goes to shit, but you get money back from the insurance and stuff like that. So if you want to plan for an extraordinary situation like this, if you want to solve that, you're not going to solve that with being profit oriented and controlling, right? But this, I feel like this is, if the situation is so bad and it's such a humanitarian crisis, then why doesn't the state step in and say, now, okay, your companies, you managed this for the longest time, but we've now seen we have a crisis and society is a societal crisis, and the state has to step in now. Right? Which the state does. That's the thing. The state steps in and says, hey, you have to wear a mask and you can't go out and you have to get vaccinated, because that's easy for the state to do. But I think they should have stepped in where it actually counts and should have, got the hospital system ready for this kind of, or as ready as you can be, right? And the thing is, if you do that and you still have problems, you can still go. Right? If they had gone, if a year ago they had gone and actually had measures and started fixing the hospital system, and we were in a situation now, I would have much easier, accepted them going, well, now we're infringing on your civil rights because what we did there to prepare, wasn't enough. But, my problem is they didn't do that in the beginning. Anyway, what Seven says, I tend to agree with you about hospitals being state-run. The thing is, I'm never one to advocate for anything being state-run, really, right? I generally don't like that, but I know a lot of doctors, and the system that we have now is not working, and that's the real problem, I think. But anyway, let's get back to the topic. So the Constitutional Court says, okay, these pandemic measures are justified. And then they don't tell the state to do anything else. And now they're going, well, we have discrimination, so we have to pass a law with really stupid consequences that I'm going to go into in a bit. But, they don't tell the state to do anything else. Right? They're not tackling, the German Constitutional Court is not tackling the core problem. And I don't know if it's there because, I don't think that's a constitutional problem, but I don't think, I'm not sure that is their actual, I don't know if it's their responsibility or whatever. It's it's not what they were set up to do, but maybe they need to step up to the plate and do this. Especially because I have especially problems with this because the measures and there's now a lot of talk for weeks, months now that they want to force vaccinate people in Germany, and they want to have a law and you have to get vaccinated. Which personally I have no skin in that game. I already have my 3 shots. I had my 12 days of feeling horrible. So I don't really care. I care about it because I think that is discrimination. I think that is not I think in Germany you can't do that under the Constitution. I think that is not compatible with the Constitution. But there already been feelers put out to the Constitutional Court, and there's already been opinions by experts, and I think also by 1 or 2 of the judges on the Constitutional Court who said really the Constitution would allow for that. So my biggest problem here is how is that not discrimination? But to say, hey, you're not vaccinated, you can't do this, you can't come in here. How is that not discrimination? But this Triage decision has to be taken because of discrimination. Because I personally, will make the point now that Triage, because of you're handicapped or whatever reason, is not discrimination. But before we do that, I think we have to explain what Triage is, because some people might not know. So Triage is a medical protocol. It's something people working in hospitals generally call these, or even labs and stuff, call these things SOP, standard operating procedure. And it's something that in a perfect world wouldn't exist really. But that in real life is a necessity, sadly. And this is a very sad topic, because if you need Triage, you're already in a suboptimal situation, right? You're already in a situation that you don't want to be in. So to put it in a sentence, the goal of Triage is to save as many lives as possible in unfavorable conditions. So it's applied. It's a method that is applied when medical resources, and there could be any kind of medical resource, beds, doctors, nurses, often medicine. In the past, it was often medicine, is not adequate to the amount of patients who are in life-threatening situations or conditions. So usually this applies to a hospital. Usually this is a local situation. Right? In the pandemic, it might be a general situation, which would be new, which would be something we've never had before, as well, not in the Federal Republic of Germany. Generally, it's a local thing. Generally, a big disaster happens, a car crash, or a huge car crash, a plane crash, big fires, terror attacks. Examples where I've read of Triage in the papers, in the 90s, 2000s in Germany was, there's a there's a bus, a holiday bus that crashes with 60 school children on board. It's a horrible crash. Many of these children are, in life-threatening situations. They all it's in the middle of nowhere. They get brought into one hospital and they have 3 doctors on call. That are there, and they call 3 more in, and then that's that. And then they'll have to decide. They can't save everybody. With plane crashes, this often happens. So it's a big disaster or something like that, and that usually temporarily outstrips the capacity of the medical system, of the local medical system, right? Because we are in a situation where hospitals are profit based. They're if you want to use like a propaganda term or something, not really a propaganda term, but a fighting term of the left, right? You would say, this is capitalism, right? Hospital is it is, right? They operate after capitalist principles, which I reckon they shouldn't, but they do. And so, your emergency beds, your emergency room staff, your staff in a hospital is, its size is proportional to what, like in a normal situation, you'd need, plus a little bit extra in case something really bad happens. And then, in certain situations, you just know you'll have a peak. There are always peaks, right? So over Christmas, it's well known that because between Christmas and New Year, at least in Germany, heart attacks peak. So they always have to have people on call in hospitals because they know this happens. Usually people eat a lot, they don't move much, then they go out for they go for a walk into the cold, and bam, like their organism is now under strain that wasn't, that hadn't experienced for a year or whatever. And that's like the thing that tips you over the edge, and then you get a heart attack, right? Or on New Year's, people blow their fingers off, which is, of course, why you weren't allowed to use fireworks over New Year's here in Germany, because then the people would go, people would blow their fingers off with fireworks, and there'd be an emergency room, and then they have to pull people from the COVID, which I don't think it works that way. But also, the situation seems to be that people just bought illegal fireworks. There's a term in German called Polenböller. You buy your fireworks from Poland, and they're just not safe, or they make their own fireworks. And they're even more liable to blow their own fingers off. Or if you're in northern Germany, you just buy your fireworks in Denmark. But, so I don't know. But, they know in certain situations, they know there's certain times of the year, whatever, when they need, like in flu season, they would generally know that, we need more emergency beds because, the flu is bad this year. So this is how it usually works. But you have an unforeseen thing. It might just outstrip what you've planned for, and generally then you can get into a situation where you have to do triage. Of course, the other example is war, right? This is why triage is a system that's hundreds of years old. I think it was originally developed during the Napoleonic Wars, I think by a French army doctor. And, in the army, triage was like, you can't really compare it. In the army, it's really not about saving as many people as you can, which is, normally that's civilian triage, because the army doesn't care. In the army, it's you save the people that are most likely to go to the front again, right? To be able to fight again as soon as possible. But we're going to leave that aside until the very end of the show, when I'm going to talk about a very stupid article in the German press, or generally, so that also happens in war. Or, of course, now when you have a situation where the government hasn't done anything and sat on its ass for 18 months and hasn't prepared, when it was obvious we will have to prepare for a special situation. And you can probably remember, I was talking to Alexander Spier, a colleague of mine. We had an episode. Oh God, which episode was that? I'm going to have to look that up. So go to privates. Privates, it's not press, not Pornhub. Might have auto-completed to Pornhub there for a second. You can go to Pornhub. It's a very different kind of itch. You're scratching. Private Citizen Press, right? Where all the episodes are. I click on more episodes at the bottom. This was a very early one. Episode 10, Flatten the Curve. I was talking to Alexander Speer about the concept of flattening the curve, right? To have all these measures so that people don't end up in the hospital. And the whole idea we talked about here was that you do that until your medical system is prepared, right? You do that and you ramp up your hospital capacity while you do that, so that then later on, when the next wave comes, you're ready. Problem is, we didn't do that. we skipped that step. So this is why now you could come into a situation where you have triage, right? Where you have to decide, there are two people, you can't save both of them, you have to decide who to save. And just to be sure here, triage is horrible. This is not something anybody wants to do. This is not something doctors want to do. You don't plan for this, but you do it in an emergency. And it's a horrible burden. It's a horrible burden on the doctor who has to decide, and as well as on, of course, the people who have to die because of it, and on their relatives, right? But it is necessary. It's logical, and it helps. It saves lives. It's an established practice that's been done for at least 100 years in civilian society, for good reason, because it works. Or as Wikipedia calls it, I'm going to quote from Wikipedia here, triage is a practice invoked when acute care cannot be provided for lack of resources. The process rations care towards those who are most in need of immediate care and who benefit most from it. In advanced triage, especially trained doctors, nurses, and paramedics may decide that some seriously injured people should not receive advanced care because they are unlikely to survive. It is used to divert scarce resources away from patients with little chance of survival in order to increase the chances for others with higher likelihoods. And, people could say in the past, you've always, I've talked about philosophy on this podcast a lot. And I'm not a believer generally of utilitarian ideas like the good of the many outweighs the good of the few, which this seems to be on the face of it. But what you shouldn't mix up here is that I don't think this is a philosophical question at all. You can certainly look at it philosophically, but that's not what it is generally. I mean, this is a medical decision. This is about you're faced with a problem, and your goal is to save as many lives as possible. This is what you do. You give the care or the resource that is scarce, you give that to the people that are most likely to survive. And this is not something you should approach emotionally. And if you talk to doctors who work in emergency rooms, you will realize that sometimes they seem like emotionally dead. They have to develop a certain, they have to get used to people dying. And if that, for us, for a normal person, that's something horrible, right? And that is something that would give you pause. But if you work in this job, you can't let that happen to you. Because if you get emotionally disturbed by something like this, and you start thinking about things, then you don't function. Or you don't function as well. And that's you can't have that happen. You need to save lives. And to do that, you need to divorce yourself from emotions to a certain degree. And you need to almost act inhumanely. And that actually makes you a better doctor in those cases. Not in every case, And if you've seen any medical show from house to, I don't know, emergency room, this is always a topic. There's a lot of Grey's Anatomy. There's a lot of discussion about this kind of thing in Grey's Anatomy, and that this is why I think triage and ethics don't mix, and this is why this Constitutional Court decision is wrong, because the Constitution the goal there is ethical or morally, right? And this has nothing to do with ethics or morals. It's a purely medical decision. As bad as that is, a doctor should not be concerned with medical decisions, right? Let's have a something I was thinking about while thinking about this. Let's have an example. Let's say there's a shootout at a bank, right? And then victims get transported, patients from that shootout get transported to a hospital. And there's one doctor, and before him there are 3 people, and they're all 3 been shot. They're all in critical condition. They all will die if they don't get help. And now this doctor can only save one of them, because the other 2 will bleed to death while he saves that one person's life. Now he has 3 people with a bullet wound that he could treat, like a civilian bystander, a police officer who's responded to the break-in, and one of the bank robbers. Right? Now a good doctor decides who to treat of these 3 people based on who's most likely to survive. Right? There's no moral, legal, or ethical decision to be made by that doctor. That is not that doctor's job. He does not decide who to save by who might have committed a crime or what crime they have committed. He doesn't care about what color their skin is. He doesn't care what sexual organs they have, right? What sex they are. He does not care if he's a good doctor or she's a good doctor or nurse or paramedic. They should not care about if this is a good person or not. This is purely about saving as many people as possible, right? And if you have 3 people who will die if you make the wrong decision and you can save 1, then saving 1 of 3 is better than saving 0 of 3. And this is why the ethics don't come into play for this. And when emotions or ethics or morals or any hate for skin color, whatever, come into play for these decisions, it makes it worse for everyone concerned. Because that impinges on the goal of saving as many people as possible. Right? And this is why it's not discrimination. It's not discrimination to want to save as many people as possible. And specifically because this is a medical decision, it's not discrimination. It would be discrimination if the doctor goes, I'm not saving the police officer because he's black. Or let's say the doctor is black and has issues with the police in the US and goes, I'm not saving the police officer because he's a police officer. And then, I don't know, tries to save the innocent bystander who dies because he had less chance of surviving, and then everybody dies. Right? That's why this is not discrimination. If you don't do triage correctly, you can get issues because you are discriminating against somebody, you're prejudiced, then you compromise this triage decision. But if you just do it medically, it's this is why they call it something like this, a clinical decision, right? Because you're doing it without emotion and without these things affecting you in a perfect world. I know that this rarely happens, and doctors are people. They're not robots. They're not Lieutenant Commander Data. But we're talking this is how it's supposed to work, right? And it's logic. The way this works, this is purely logic. And it's horrible, and it's logic driven by necessity. This is not a situation anybody wants to be in. And you don't want to be on the wrong side of this decision. It doesn't matter if you're, if you're handicapped, or if you have pre-existing conditions, or if you're just old, right? If you're in a car with 3 other people, they have a horrible crash, everybody's very injured, there's paramedics, and there's 2 younger people, and you're 20 years older, whatever, or I don't know, you're older. Chances are that if you all have the same injuries, you're less likely to survive. Chances are, the triage decision is going to be against you, which you don't want that to happen, but, it might happen. But, why? Why is it bad if you take ethics or morals or the Constitution into this situation? Just imagine. I don't have an issue with the German Constitutional Court on a, like, I can understand in a certain clinical way, so to speak, how they arrived at this decision. They might be completely correct that, like, the letter of the law and the laws we have in Germany and the Constitution and established legal practice points to their decision that would indicate that we need a law to protect disabled people in a situation like this. But that can't possibly be the spirit of the law, because you're making the situation worse, right? Just imagine, worst case, based on this decision. So the federal government in Germany passes a law that protects disabled people in a triage situation during the pandemic, right? And now you're in a hospital. We're in a hospital. There are two people, patient A and patient B, who have possibly fatal COVID-19. So they're in a situation that both of them, although they're different and pre-existing conditions or whatever, both of them, if they don't get the care necessary, will die, probably. And now we only have the ability to give one of them the care they need. Now, one person, let's call him patient A, is relatively healthy and has good chances to survive if they get the right care. Other person, patient B, is severely disabled. So somebody, like the people who complained to the Constitutional Court, people who need other assistance of other people to actually, go through their daily lives and stuff like that. And they're severely disabled and they're unlikely to survive this case of COVID-19, even given the best care. Now, ordinarily, in normal circumstances, a doctor put in this horrible situation, a good doctor, would most likely decide to treat patient A to save, because, it's very likely that they will save them. And they would let patient B die, as horrible as that is. But now imagine we have this law that forces the doctor legally to actually treat patient B instead, because he needs to protect disabled people. Now, what could happen now is that patient A dies, who could have been saved because they don't get any care, and patient B, even though they get the treatment, they get the bed, they doctors are working day and night to save them, they die as well, because as the doctor in the first case has correctly assessed, because of complications, because of their disability, it's very unlikely for them to survive. So the outcome of this law I admit it's a it's a hypothetical situation, but that's what you do if you think about ethics and stuff like that. Hypothetical laws that we haven't seen yet. The outcome of this law would be that now, instead of having saved one person of two, both are dead. Right? And I just want to see, this is horrible. I don't want to see that. Strike that. I don't want to see that. But the press that was very, very positive about this law and how important that is, there's going to be articles written about this. The first time two people die in a situation like this, even though one of them could have been saved, there's just going to be outrage. You can already see it coming. I can't understand how that can possibly be. Leaving the letter of the law and all established practice. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a constitutional judge. I'm just a person who tries to think about these things logically. And I would think that constitutional judges should do that as well from time to time. It just amazes me that is the apparent intent of that law. Because, if that wasn't the situation, right? You can have an argument that you have two people where one of them is disabled, but they have a better chance to survive than the other person. And that they don't get put in the bed because they're disabled, and the doctor goes, thinks I'm not going to save them because they're disabled. That would indeed be discrimination. But it would not be it would be medical malpractice, right? As well. It would already be, I would think you could already sue the hospital there. I mean, not that that's but that's in the end what a law is. Somebody dies and you sue them. That would be the same under this law, I would expect. So yes, there could be a case of discrimination, but I just don't understand how making this law will prevent that. Like it will cause this case that I've just explained, I'm pretty sure. I think this decision happened because it was made based on like emotions and the letter of the law, and not logic and medical expertise, which has worked up until now, which is why triage is done as it is done, because it works. It's an established practice. It works, right? It's just like if you do a heart transplant, that's the way you do it. You just you don't pass a law to just change it up for some arbitrary reason if you've done it that way for 50 years and it fucking works, right? And I understand where the emotion comes from. Very much I do. I mean, nobody wants to be on the wrong side of a triage decision because you're dead. But it's somewhat a fact of life that everybody can end up, anybody just can end up that way, in an accident or whatever. Yes, it's probably more likely if you have pre-existing conditions, or if you're mortally obese, or if you're disabled. Yes, but like it doesn't help if we try to legislate our way out of that. That just makes it worse for everybody, I feel. Like legislating this medical decision is a bad idea. And I know, probably most people listening to this are not doctors and they're not medical professionals, but, lots of you are probably nerds like me and know more about IT security than medicine. It's kind of like, if you were you were going to encrypt some data, you go like, okay, I use AES because that makes sense. And then you have a law that goes, no, that's discriminatory. You have to use MD5. And then you go, well, that's not an encryption algorithm. That's hashing. No. That doesn't matter. That's discriminatory. Use MD5. That's kind of how this kind of decision should be up to doctors. Like, I don't think judges should decide. And, if it was just arbitrary, like, if they make a law, if they could make a law and it would just like this one case, I said, with probably, they want to prevent actual discrimination that fouls up triage, so to speak. If I could think they could legislate that, then yeah, maybe that would be a point. But they can't, right? We know where this is going to go. This is going to end up having a chilling effect. I mean, you do not want this kind of thing. You do not want laws. Like, you have a life and death situation in an emergency room. Like, every second counts. You want to say, doctors want to do what they do best. They want to save somebody's lives. They don't want to be, they can't be concerned with laws. It can't be somebody from hospital legal staff going, no, you can't save that guy because he's disabled and that guy's black, so that guy needs to be first in line. And also all the women first. Like, you can't do that. I mean, you can do it, but I think it actually doesn't work well. There are lots of examples, for example, in the US medical system, because the US is a very, legislative, what's the word I'm looking for? Lawsuit happy country. There's lots of, you just need to watch Emergency Room or House or whatever. Like, there's lots of things where like doctors can't do what they would medically do. It's the trolley problem, but now with bureaucracy. Yeah, exactly. So they can't do what they would actually medically do because they might get sued, right? Or they're afraid to do a certain procedure even though they are pretty sure it's going to save or it's gonna, help somebody, but like they might get sued and then it's like too dangerous or whatever. Do you not want that? There are people dying. You don't want any laws. Like, of course you want laws close to, but like, in that decision in the emergency room, the doctors shouldn't think of laws. They should think medically, purely medically. That was like the best situation you can have. And I think what this does is something I want to then talk about next episode if everything goes according to plan. What we have here is a classic example between the difference between law and justice, right? The people who complained to the federal court, they probably wanted justice, although I'm not quite sure, because if you're disabled and you end up in, like, if you're disabled in a way that medically impinges this decision, you're probably going to end up on the wrong side of the Triage decision, right? And generally, if Triage works as it works, without any biases, without any discrimination in there, then, just trying to save the most people you can, then that is justice to me, right? That is how we want society to work. That is how it should work ethically. That is the best way to do things. But it you might not personally, if you're in that situation, see that as justice, because you're the one who will be consigned to die. And the other, like, so they might even think they want justice done, but now they have the Constitutional Court like make the government create a law that I'm pretty sure will not get justice done, because like the thing they want to protect against, I think, which is not like, this is not clear from this decision, and it's not clear to me from the petitions that I've read that led to this decision. But I think the idea is they want to, like, people want to be protected. I'm disabled. I want to be protected against being my life being like consigned away in a Triage decision for no medical reason, just because I'm disabled, and people think, oh, he's not worth as much as anybody, as the next person, because he's disabled for whatever reason, right? Whatever the disablement is, right? Might be as simple as, okay, I don't have any legs, and the other guy has 2 legs, and so we're gonna try to save him or the other guy because he has has a better life ahead of him or whatever. But that's not how Triage is supposed to work. And I can understand the impulse trying to protect against that, but you can't do that with law. Like, how is the law gonna solve that issue? The law should just say Triage should be done after medical reasons only. Like, which is the only reason there is who's more likely to survive. If we have to make a decision between 2 people, we're making the decision for the person that is more likely to survive. Oops, I just pressed the Windows button, and the start menu popped up. Never done that by accident before. So you should... I can understand the impulse, but the law is not going to help you there. Like, I feel that often, laws are, if you look at it from a bird's eye view, right? Laws are procedures employed by a state to, if everything goes well, approach justice, right? To come as close to justice as possible. And justice is also a very philosophical thing. 2 people can have a very different understanding of justice. And justice can be a personal thing, and it can be a thing for society. Because it's the state, this is generally what the state is concerned with. Laws are not concerned. Like, the goal there is to have justice for, society as a whole, not a single person. So But the problem is that laws that are meant to do this can sometimes cause unjust outcomes. And I feel like that's what I'm going to talk about next episode. This is often hard to see for people who are concerned with laws, right? With working with them every day, lawyers, attorneys, and people like that, judges. So I'm going to try to talk about that more, more in depth in an upcoming episode. But I feel like that is somewhat the decision. That's somewhat the thing here. Like, I feel like, judges shouldn't. I don't want our country to become a technocracy, right? Where everybody's just like, it's just like the tech people who decide everything, and the tech elite, or like the intelligentsia, or whatever you want to call. I don't want that. But I feel like some decisions you can't legislate. Like, a judge shouldn't go and medical decisions should be up to medical professionals who are trained for this and who've been in this situation before and who know what they're doing. If you try to legislate that, it's gonna go wrong. It's like with anything technical. Just think of anything. It's like the fucking. Maybe I have to do an episode on this at some point as well. People have been asking me for it. It's like net neutrality, right? There's like. People think you can have a law that says everybody on the internet is equal. Like, if you're talking, like internet service providers, just don't understand how the situation works, right? So you can't, for example, in Germany, just a very, very quick side example here. In Germany, as I said before, the telecom, which used to be the post office, owned all the telephone cables, right? So up until the 80s, they put all the copper everywhere. They owned the telephone infrastructure. They then went and privatized that part of the post into the telecom, which is a private company which owns the telephone network and then owns all the internet stuff, all the copper. And a part of that deal was a law that said they have to give access to all the other telecom providers, right? So I used to work for a relatively small ISP called Net Cologne in Cologne, who you could, like, if you lived in Cologne or Bonn, you could have like DSL internet from them, right? And they had their own network, but the so-called last mile, to get from, or often it's more, to get from their part of the network to your home, use the formerly state-owned infrastructure that now owns the telecom, and that to make that connection. So they had to rent that from the telecom. There was a law that telecom had to rent that to them, whatever. But you can't then just, like, not that they tried in Germany, but like, you can't go and like, okay, we have net neutrality here, everybody's now equal. So you can't just pretend that Net Cologne, which is like a relatively small ISP, and there are much smaller ones, that has like a network in 2 cities in Germany, pretty much, or 3 or 4. I think they're in Aachen as well. They're probably bigger these days, but like, back in the day, basically 2 cities with the behemoth that owns all of the fucking cable in all of Germany. You can't just go, they're equal, right? You can have a goal to equalize the market and the playing field, and you can pass laws and try to make it more equal, but in the end, they're not equal, right? It's just not the physical reality of the world. And I feel like often there's like a disconnect there. And sometimes I think, judges, politicians, generally people, journalists, they don't, if you're not in the actual industry, or you haven't done a hell of a lot of research into this kind of thing, you don't know what's going on. And you tend to make decisions that look like justice, for in this case, on a grand scale, but they actually don't work because in practice they don't map to the situation on the ground, right? And I feel this is one of the cases here. Speaking of journalism, I'm a journalist, and I became a journalist almost 10 years ago. On the 1st of March, I'll be a professional journalist for 10 years. And even before that, when I did my first podcast, First real, Linux Outlaws in 2007 when I started that. I set out to make journalism better because I thought journalism wasn't as good as it could be. And I think it's gotten a lot worse since then. And this story we're talking about today, or general triage, is one of the cases where it's just been horrible. At least here in Germany. I can only talk about, I only followed this topic in Germany, but it's just been horrible. So on the 4th of December, for example, Der Spiegel, which is a huge, it's a German weekly news magazine that's read by a lot of people. And they're one of the, say, 4 or 5 publications in Germany that generally inform public discourse. They had a title story, Auf Leben und Tod, Triage, das grausame Dilemma der Ärzte. Or roughly translated, Life or Death, Triage, the cruel dilemma of the doctors. And I mean, you can tell from the, I put the cover into the show notes. I mean, you can tell by the black fade out and everything. They're going like, this is grim, right? Cover picture has nothing to do with Triage. I think that is an intensive care transport, probably of a COVID patient. But it's nothing to do with Triage. But like, they're treating the subject in 2021, in December of 2021. If you read this story, if you read into that, it's almost like it's a new thing to them. And I saw this on the newsstand. I had to buy the issue and I had to read it because I was like, I saw it at the newsstand. Are these people insane? Are they dumb? It's like, and it was like exactly like you think. It's like basically what they did is like this cover is basically, it could say like a chips, or like for my American listeners, French fries. The amazing thing you can do with potatoes. And they're like, oh, we've discovered this thing. We've been eating potatoes for years. And we discovered this thing. If you peel them and cut them in strips, and then you deep fry them, they turn into this amazing dish that you've never even heard of. Right? And why I understand that, like, the general public, and they're writing for the general public, probably doesn't know what triage is. You can't treat this as if this was like a new thing. Right? And there have been stories about triage. Like, there has been the bus crash and the plane crash. And like every fucking emergency episode is about like fucking triage. I mean, I know about triage from when I was 14, right? Because I was watching a stupid sci-fi show called Deep Space Nine. And there's a season 5, episode 4. I actually had to look this up, which episode this was, but I could remember it very vividly. It's called No, the Battle to the Strong, where Jake Sisko, who is training as a journalist, oh, the irony, is in some camp and they get the Klingons attack and Bashir has to like fucking save people, and like they explain what triage is. Like, and Jake's literally there with like blood on his hands and he's like, fuck, how can you do this? And he writes a story about this whole thing. But that explains. And then somebody actually on Twitter told me that there's a Voyager episode, I think from 2 years later or a year later, that does the same thing. So, I knew about this from when I was a teenager because I was watching fucking Star Trek. So I can't understand. Like, I hope to God there was somebody in this newsroom. Like, if I would have been in the Spiegel newsroom and they were talking about we're gonna do this title story, I would have stood up and said, guys, are you insane? I know this is a topic right now and we have to write about this, but you can't do it like this. You can't do it like this is like a new thing we just discovered. Like, people are going to think we're dumb. There's doctors reading this fucking magazine. What are they, like, what the fuck are you guys doing? I hope to God there was, or not actually God, because it's just a thing I say. I hope to Bob Dylan, that is, his Bobness, his holy Bobness, that there was somebody in that newsroom who said that. Like, this is horrible that this was the title story, but if there was nobody who objected against this, then we're truly doomed. Like, I mean, I understand that people are afraid that the hospital system is going to be overwhelmed and they're going to die because they don't have enough beds. But like, that is an emotional thing that could happen, but the the probability of that happening to you is tiny. Like the probability of you, I'm literally walking over the street, getting run over by a car and being dead, it's much higher. There's like, for estimates, I don't know, but there's estimates between 50 and 100 people a day die in Germany because a doctor makes a mistake and they die in a hospital. It's only in a hospital. It's not even like walk-in stuff. People die. Like, you know, my wife, who's not even like, she's a biologist, she's a researcher. She works in a hospital. She has stories like every once in a while she talks to me about like, because, you know, she works with patients for studies, and then it's like the stuff where the patient nearly dies because somebody fucked up. Happens. So if you talk to the emergency room doc, I mean, all this, the people die. It's like, I understand that you're afraid of this, but it's if you're a journalist and you're writing about this, it's your fucking job to tell people to not do. I mean, they're doing this because they're selling the fucking magazine. I understand that. It works. They're making fucking money. But maybe journalism should also be state-owned, or no, shouldn't. No, take that back. But like not for profit or something. I don't know. Paid for by the readers, please, directly, because this is bullshit. This is fucking clickbait. Your job as a journalist, you're fucking morally obligated to tell people, like, tell people the things as close as the truth as you can get. And you have to tell them that their fear of this happening to them is like irrational. And that there are many other peoples and many other problems in society and many other situations that they should be rather afraid of and rather care about. Like, and also fucking mention that if you do this fucking story, your fucking moral of the story at the end should be that this is all because our fucking government hasn't done fuck all to improve the situation in the last 18 months. Because the guy who was running the medical system during the fucking pandemic up until, like, I don't know, a month ago was a fucking moron. Who didn't do he didn't do fuck all. And that's actually the scandal. Also, this whole, like, oh, this is so cruel for the doctors. Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. That's true. But that's really not what the story is about. Like, they're just using that to like, you know, make you even more emotional. It's horrible. And it wasn't only Der Spiegel. Like, when I was researching this story, you know, for one of the first stories I came across about this actual decision by the Constitutional Court is on the German. So the German public broadcaster ARD has a primetime news show. It's called Tagesschau. It's what everybody watches. 8:15. That's you get your news, your 15 minutes of news. Oh no, it's 8 to 8:15. Sorry, of course, because 8:15 is when the actual movie starts or whatever. They did a story about this Constitutional Court decision, and it's full of crap. It's like it's a shitty story. But like they have a box out in the story which just takes the cake, which is I actually I screenshotted it because I'm paranoid now, and I think they're gonna change it. Somebody on the ID is gonna listen to no, they're not. They don't speak fucking English. But if they do, the White House correspondent is gonna listen to this, and then we need to change this box out fabs onto us, which they're not gonna do. But I screenshotted it just in case. So they have a box out explaining what Triage is. And it's completely like biased. It's like very tendentious. It kind of is set up to make you think that Triage is a bad thing. It talks about the military background and, you know, that it was used to consider which soldiers can be at the front again very soon, which is true. But which has nothing to do with this fucking topic we're talking about, the pandemic, whatever, because, like, you know, military triage is decidedly different to triage in civilian hospitals. Got nothing to, I mean, it's a historic background, but, you know, who fucking cares? This is a box out to explain to somebody who doesn't know what triage is. What do they care about the historic background? Right? I do, but I'm a historian, and I know it better than them, so what the fuck? But it also has the hilariously, incredibly wrong sentence. So they explain what Triage is, and they say, I'm going to say it in German, just in case I have some German listeners, and I'm going to translate it. They say, so they're talking about Triage, and then the second sentence is, dabei kann zum Beispiel die Überlebenschance eine Rolle spielen. So, talking about Triage, in this process, God, why can't I fucking translate anything? It's because I'm in English mode. I've never been good at translating. This is why I nearly failed my translation test in university in English. So when you're talking about triage, the chance to survive of the patients can be of importance or can be a factor, which is completely wrong. It's wrong. It's completely wrong. It's not. It can be a factor. It's literally the only factor. This is how triage works. You're looking at who is more likely to survive, and you're treating that person. You're giving if you have to ration resources, you give the resources to the person that is most likely to survive. It's not like that can be a factor. It is the only fucking factor. Like, they can't even fucking explain what and I just read it. It's on fucking, like, a few minutes ago. I read it off Wikipedia. It's on fucking Wikipedia. This is hilarious. It's not hilarious. It's a scandal. These are the fucking people I have to pay by law. I have to fucking pay them money so they can write and broadcast this hilarious, tendentious, and completely wrong bullshit. And how can, like, of course their take on the fucking triage and the law and whatever the decision is completely different, but they don't even fucking understand what triage is. So how can they even begin to make that decision, that assessment? I don't even get it. SRC says, last 2 years it looks like journalists don't have any ethics or morals, so they can't know what the doctors think. Well, actually they could, because doctors shouldn't have, really, doctors shouldn't do ethical decisions either. I mean, I'm not saying in a hospital setting, whatever, it doesn't have to be an ethical situation. Like, there doesn't have to be ethical involvement, of course. It's like hospitals have ethical, like, there are special people for that. If people who do research, they have ethics committees as well, which is very important. But these are specifically people trained for ethical decisions. Like, in an operating room, you don't want ethical decisions. Because they're always also debatable, right? So the whole thing about medicine and SOPs and procedures is they shouldn't be debatable. You need a plan. You need, like, this happens, this is what we do, right? And there can't be any room for, like, oh, let's think about how this ethically impacts us, and the same thing, like, hospital have legal staff and stuff. And sometimes there are legal considerations. And sometimes they trump medical considerations. I always think that's a problem. Like, for example, I've been, for a long time, I've never understood why people, I understand the dilemma. I understand the legal dilemma and I understand the ethical dilemma. But I think there are ways to go around that. I think people who are terminally ill or have, like, seriously mental illnesses like Alzheimer's, whatever, if they decide they want to die, I think doctors should enable them to die. And, there have been cases in the past when people helped them die and, gotten into legal trouble. Especially, I've always been of this opinion, but especially after following Terry Pratchett, like, and his fight for this very thing, I feel so even stronger, right? I think, you can't just just have anybody go, I want to die, and then you kill them, because, you have people who are mentally ill and, who have problems, who really shouldn't be helped to die, but then there are people who should, like, if they want to die, And if they're in pain or whatever, and they just want to die painlessly, why not? Like, why shouldn't that be their choice? If they're like, if you can assess that they're mentally ill, I know that's hard and whatever, there are problems connected with that. But just having a law that says you can't do that, that's illegal, is just dumb to me. It's just like, why is there laws to decide if women want to get an abortion? Like, why is that not their decision? Right? Especially if they're legally of age, like, and they're mentally all right. Like, why would the state even care? Like, that's always like fucking religion or some weird shit being made. That's like if you mix like too much morals or too much like metaphysical or fucking religion up with laws. It just never goes well. It should be a medical decision. Right? It should be the patient and the doctor. That should be it. I agree with Mode 7, by the way, who says some journalists must have ethics and morals. There are, I know a lot of them. I think often this is not a case of not having ethics. I think this is just a case of just being poorly educated and not being able to think critically. I think people who create, I mean, yes. I mean, in the case of the RD, that was just a guy who wrote, or a girl, or whoever wrote that fucking box out was just not thinking clearly as they should have. I don't think they were actually trying to mislead people, even though it's bloody tendentious and it makes Triage sound like something that's really horrible, which it kind of is, but it's also good. Like, it's horrible, but you have to understand that it only happens when you're in a horrible situation and you can't change that situation, right? And then it's the best thing you can do, and you're actually saving lives, so it's a good concept. And, well, with the Der Spiegel cover, yeah, those guys are like, somebody signed off on that, and I'm pretty sure they're so high up in that hierarchy. They're like a editor-in-chief, whatever, at Der Spiegel. They must know their job. They must be intelligent enough to understand that they're just stirring up emotion. Like, this is like Bild level. This is not journalism. This is like fucking, I don't know what it is. It's scum. It's fucking smut. It's like, I don't like people burn books, but I almost have the urge to say you should burn that shit. Yeah. So that's pretty much for this episode. I hope I didn't bring you down too much. If you have another opinion, please let me know. Contact details in the show notes, privatecitizen.press. And as always, I'm happy to read that. I'm happy to read out on the show. I'm happy to have a discussion with you, even like on the podcast, if somebody is a doctor or whatever, and or just is very articulate with their opinion. Please let me know. I'd love to debate things like this. Mozam says, I'm gonna need 3 beers after this episode. Just don't get too melancholic. It is horrible, isn't it? Like, it's one of these things where I think it's people who mean well, who I think, as I said to Mike in a recent episode, I think they are the most dangerous people of our times. People who mean well, but who are not well educated in the topic they're trying to fix. Mode 7 says, I know a respiratory therapist that has seen COVID from the front lines. Well, if they want to talk on a podcast about it, you know where to contact me. It'd be great to talk to somebody like this. And I'm pretty sure they will have a different opinion than me. Because, they've just seen it all firsthand. I personally think it's, I've talked to people like that as well. But like, with some people, I had the somewhat like, they were to my feeling, they were getting overly emotional about it, which then impinged their decision making. But it's like, I mean, it's understandable, right? So the people that are the historically the people that are the most ardent pacifists are people who have seen war firsthand, right? Who've been in the trenches and have seen people blown apart, and have seen horrible atrocities. And I think it'll be interesting just to talk to people. But I don't know. I feel like I can't. So if I can't imagine talking to a doctor who is in a situation where they would have to do triage at some point, and them approving of this decision that there should be a law there. Because I would assume that if they do, or if they're prepared to do triage, then they think they would do that under medical considerations, where there is no discrimination, right? Where there's only cold, hard, and I was going to say facts, but this is all flawed. We're all humans, right? So you might decide that this one person has a higher chance to survive, and you're wrong, and both people die anyway. It happens a lot. But this is all this medicine. It's on a best effort basis. You can only do. That's the thing. That's why I think if you work in a job like this, and I could never. I'm way too empathic to ever do anything like this. But you have to kind of deaden yourself against emotions, because sooner or later, if you're in an emergency room, or if you're in a hospital, you're a hospital doctor, and you treat you treat something that is a life or death situation, illness that could cause life or death. Sooner or later, you make a wrong decision, and somebody will die, and you have to live with that, and then you still have to function. And I could probably never do this. This is why I'm a fucking journalist, because the worst thing that can happen is I'm wrong, and then I'm wrong, and hopefully nobody dies. Because please don't do anything because of me and then die. I don't want to have that. On my conscience. I don't know. It's a bit of a downer, but I think it was something important that we had to talk about, and I got a little bit of a happy pick me up after that if we're going to talk shortly about some feedback. Which is, I'm not going to talk about specific feedback this time. I received quite a lot of feedback over the holiday break, but it was almost all of it was in a similar vein. And it was just not like something you'd read out on the podcast. It was mostly like people saying they're happy that the show exists, and some of them sent monetary contributions along with it, and some people just in various ways on the forum, via email, via personal messages, just told me they enjoy the show. Almost everybody said with that they don't agree with me every time, and most of them in some way or another are all united in the understanding that is the whole point of the show. That the point is not, kind of like they said this on No Agenda as well a lot. It's not about you agreeing with me, but hopefully I'll give you a viewpoint to consider. And that is pretty much, I'm just doing what I think journalism should be. I look at primary sources if possible. I look at them critically. I take my own biases into account. If I read other people's writings, I try to take their biases into account. And I look at it from several angles. And then, of course, I have an opinion. And then I explain, as objectively as I can what the situation is. And then I'm going to give you my take on it. And I'm going to make really clear that is my take. And I think that's all we can do as journalists, and be upfront with that. And I think it's cool if people appreciate that. I think that's very, very cool. And that made me very happy over the holiday break that so many people approached me one way or another to say that. And it gave me a lot of enthusiasm, to continue the show into 2022 and give you at least 52 more episodes, hopefully a bit more. Hopefully there are going to be some extra episodes. But, I'm going to have to, after February, I'm going to have to struggle to make up February without episodes. And there's going to be holidays throughout the year where I'm on a motorbike and I can't record a podcast. But I'll make up for it. Mod 7 says, I forgot to mention that I appreciate the show, but I do. I think you said that before. Probably, I think you said that in stream before Mod 7. I'm pretty sure. But thank you very much. It's just it's nice to hear that. I mean, I see that people listen to the show, or I can't really know if you listen to it, but I see people on Twitch chat, I see people watching the streams, and there's a hell of a lot of people downloading the episode, so I presume somebody listens to it, so that's cool. But it's always nice when people say that. They're like, could have CRS, can't remember shit quite badly. I have no idea that was a thing. CRS, I've never heard that before. I have to remember that. That happens to me as well. Well, not maybe it's like me. You can't remember certain shit. Like my wife's always, why? Like we talked about this. Why? Like she'll make like a plan what she'll cook during the week, what I'll cook or whatever, and then she's like, why can't you remember this? You can remember like fucking ship names that are just appear once in like The Expanse or something. Or like in Star Trek, you remember what everybody's fucking rank is, like even like a guy who's only in one episode, and you remember all like the actors and funny little stories about them. But you can't fucking remember what I told you to cook yesterday. Like I'm like, yeah, yeah, that's it. Got CRS. So I just wanted to tell you that I appreciated that very much. Very cool. And with that, let's go to the obligatory. Wait, I'm looking for a button to play the jingle to the obligatory toss a coin to your podcaster segment. Tea, which is not a good thing. But yeah, if you appreciate what I do, then keep listening, and that's all you need to do. But you could also support the show monetarily, because I'm a poor freelance journalist, and I don't say that lightly. I'm currently doing my bookkeeping in Texas for the last year. I didn't make as much money as I made 2020, and that wasn't a lot either. Send checks, hashtag send fab checks. Yeah, nobody sent me a check yet, which I'm kind of happy, because as I've gone into beforehand, I don't even fucking know how to cash a check, because I've never done so. Never either written or cashed a check in my life, because by the time I was old enough to have money, Germany, in Europe, we didn't have any checks anymore. I can remember my father, one scene like in my childhood where my father actually got out his checkbook, and I think we were in France, and they were more backward than Germany back then where money was concerned, and he actually signed a check. Put out his checkbook. I also remember there was, for a long time, when everybody already had electronic credit card readers, you'd go to like this backwater place in France, being like in this hotel, and the waiter would like take your credit card and then have this, like, why they're raised letters on a credit card, because they used to have this machine, and then you just go and then it would just like copy the imprint of the credit card on like this tear off paper thing. And that's how that was like kind of a check, but it was a credit card. It was like that was weird. But anyway, don't send me checks. I would appreciate it if you become a patron on Patreon. Link in the show notes, private citizen of press. Or you can send me one-off contributions via PayPal, which quite a lot of people did over the holidays, which was very nice. And it's also very needed because I'm currently saving up. I need a graphics card badly, and because they right now, I don't know if if you can buy them, the prices are would suggest that they're made of pure gold. So I'm trying. I'm trying to save up for that, so it was very much appreciated. Yeah, but you don't have to do that. And this is just, I also not trying. I'm really, believe me when I say this, I'm not trying to guilt you into this. I'm just mentioning it because it just helped me keep the show going, and it's the value for value model. It's pioneered by the No Agenda Show. And with that, I would like to thank everybody who's pitched in and made this show happen for you. So you should be thankful to them as well if you aren't them. This is getting too complicated. So thanks to Georges, Steve Hose, Butterbeans, Jonathan M. Heavy, Michael Mullen Jensen, Dave, Michael Small, 1I11G, Rodain the Insane, Jaroslav Lichtblau. I really need an effect. This is another thing I need. I need one of those fucking, what they're called, these podcasting, make these live, everybody uses them, things with the buttons. Anyway, we're thanking people. I'm sorry, I got lost. Rodain the Insane, Jaroslav Lichtblau, Jackie Plage, Philipp Klostermann, IKN, Vlad, Bennett Piata, Tobias, Sandman616, Kai Sears, Mode 7, Joe Pozo, Fadi Mansour, Dirk Didi, Rizal, Avis, David Potter, Mika, Mr. Amish, Cam, Dave Umrish, Ricky M, Barry Williams, Jonathan, RJ Tracy, Rick Bragg, Captain Eckert, Robert Forster, Superuser, Astro C, D, No Reply, John Chandler, Robin Liebe, Zach, Felipe Cavallo, and Ewan Curry. Thanks to all of you. And Mode 7, why are you worrying that you didn't tell me that you appreciate the show? You're on Patreon, man. You're a patron. This is I know that you appreciate the show. And I also, twice, because you're also on Twitch. And that's the next thing. I have to thank my Twitch subscribers, because obviously I live stream these things, but also I stream other things. Well, I try to when I can. So thanks to my Twitch subscribers, Stardew Lisa, Mike the Dane, Jonathan MH _com, El Terrestrius Jim, IndieGameX, Redeemer F, Sandman616, Bacon the Pork, Mode 7 is unavailable, Nomt771, and Water News XYZ. Thanks to all of you. Mode 7 says, because I sent you useless Corvette videos and didn't say anything about the show. Oh, those were actually quite fun. Oh yeah, we had a... I think I didn't answer that last email, did I? Sorry, I was getting distracted by work. We had an interesting. We had some disagreements because I don't think that anything with the middle engine is a Corvette, and that's just heresy, and they should all burn. Also, the fucking space in the dashboard is just like the fucking gap is just hilariously bad. No, please, give me my C2 or C3 Corvette in like that metallic blue color, that fucking electric blue or whatever that is. That's all I need. That's the last car I need. And it got 2 seats, so I can take my wife. That's all I need. That's all I will ever need. But thanks everybody for pitching in and helping with the show and making it possible. So also thanks to bindmark.co.uk, because they provide me, they're a cloud hoster from the UK, and they provide me with the servers that the audio files reside on, and all the bandwidth and everything, and I definitely couldn't do the show without them. So thanks to Bindmark. And that's it. The theme song to this podcast called Acoustic Roots by Raul Cabezali. Everything else, I licensed that from him. Everything else, all the music is licensed via Epidemic Sound, which includes the song I'm going to play you out with. And I'm going to play you out with Bo the Drifter, which we'd had some songs by him before. It's called Go On Blues. Go On Blues by Bo the Drifter. And that was it. First show of 2022. See you soon. Hopefully next week. Until then, aim to misbehave. Okay, I'm gonna have to fix that in post. That sounded weird. The start sounded like it was... that was better. Okay, sorry about that. Let's do that again.
I'm a rolling stone, bound to roam. Come the morning, or I'll be gone. Pouring rain, wanna hear that train. There she comes, won't you get on? Won't you get on? Watch the trees, falling leaves, like the breeze, won't you blow on? Take a sip, I'ma pack my grip. One more trip, and I'ma move on. Move on. Across the track, don't look back. All the jack, won't you roll on? City lights, what blinds your eyes? Don't look twice, won't you go on?
Right, so that's our podcast recorded. Yes, so the the C3 is kind of used to my. It's like, when I was a kid, that was the car I wanted. The C4 was the one that was at the time current, but the C3 is just, I just love that look. So that was my favorite car. But in recent years, I've fallen in love with the C2. I think the C2 is now also my favorite Corvette. I think they're lovely. As you can see, C3 would be a lot cheaper. I think the problem with both of these is just the maintenance. I think C3 is probably easier. I think parts for C2 would be almost non-existent. And 60,000 euros is quite steep. I think the 19,000 euros for this I would actually pay. Not that I really can afford that, but if I could, I would, you can see the rust. There's gonna be maintenance to be done on this, but it's a beautiful car. I mean, it's kind of a hobby car, isn't it? Like you'd be lying under it as much as you'd be riding it, but they produced the 3C way longer. It's just a beautiful car. That color also. I just that color. It's just that blue color. It's just so beautiful. Whenever I see one of those, I was like, oh God. There's actually a place relatively close to where I live where they sell classic cars. A lot of them, which is pretty awesome. But anyway, I'm gonna rate now. You could drop one engine with a fuel injection into that car and repairs would be less frequent. An LS engine. Okay. Well, you could probably do that in the US. Replacing, putting an engine that is not supposed to be in a car, in the paperwork, into in a car in Germany is a hassle. If you my car, my T4, if the engine gives out, right, I could presumably buy another T4 engine, but just slot that in. That's not a problem. The TÜV, Technische Überprüfungsverein, doesn't care about that. It's kind of our MOT, or is it MOD? The car license people. But changing the fucking, changing another, and it's just a fucking nightmare. I have a friend who has a lovely, an historic, what'd she drive? I think a Plymouth, a 70s. Is it a Plymouth? I don't know. It's beautiful. But anyway, we're gonna rate my good friend Jonathan now, who unsurprisingly is playing Escape from Tarkov. Because
I don't know what the spawn chances for
alone probably because I'm not there. So let's rate him. He's gonna give me grief, and then he's trying to
total Tarkov
rope me into playing with him on his chat. But I actually have to finish this podcast, and I probably have to bed because I'm fucking
quest
tired.
that I have yet again.
But I'm gonna risk it and rate him. So please stay on board and
I always wonder, do
Jonathan a
people
little
pick
bit?
it up?
He's great. You have noticed his name in, both.
Never here.
He's both a patron and a Twitch subscriber, and also I do another podcast with him, of course. But let's go rate him, and please stay on board and say hello.
Something's going on over there.
See you soon. I'm gonna try to do the I'm gonna try to do some Witches streams, and I'm gonna try to do that Blue Bricks build stream at some point. I'm sorry, I have too much work to do. It's horrible, but I will try. When will you kill him? Oh yeah, we played together at the end of the year, but we kind of had a Christmas truce. So next time we play together,
generally pretty friendly on
stream, I don't think it's unavoidable. And then he's gonna have to punish me. It's gonna be horrible. But
I think the scabs that attack other people at this point.
So I'll see you in a bit.
They
More
either
streams. I hope I keep promising this for months. But
I can only attack
I'm trying.
one every 50th raid
See
or whatever
you
to not